right, man, it's great to see you all. It's always a privilege to get to be here at Real Life. If we've never met, my name is Breaux, and I get to be on the teaching team here, and just love this place. Want to welcome all of you, whether you're inside or outside, or maybe you're joining us online tonight. So grateful for you. And we are in this series where we're talking about getting our hearts going in the right direction, to not let anything, especially our stuff, steal our affections and our devotion from God. And we're talking about all this because, as Jake said last week, Jesus talked about it a lot. And we're also talking about it because all of us have been blessed to be a blessing. Every single one of us are rich in some way. Now you're thinking, hold up a second, bro. Did you just call me rich? Dude, I'm far from rich. Now I know some rich people, but I'm certainly not one of them. And that's one of the side effects of being rich. Lots of rich people are in denial. Gallup did a survey asking what is rich. They surveyed people who made around $30,000 to $35,000 a year and asked them, what is rich? And they came back with around $75,000 a year. If you had that much money, then you'd be rich. But I guarantee you, if you ask people to make $75,000 a year if they're rich, they would say, are you kidding me? Man, no, I am not rich. And the survey's consensus came back that the average American thought that if you made $150,000 a year, then you were rich. But again, if you were to ask most people to make $150,000 a year, are you rich? They would say, heck no, I'm not rich. I'm far from it. I can remember thinking when I first got back when I first got into ministry, I was working several jobs. I was doing a construction job. I was a custodian at a grade school. I was a referee in basketball, and I was making $35 a week as a part-time student ministry pastor. Then I got a full-time ministry job, making $16,000 a year. And I thought, man, I am loaded. I am so stinking rich. Until I heard about a buddy of mine who was making $23,000 doing the same job. I thought, now, he's rich. You see, here's the deal. Nobody thinks they are rich, but everybody knows some rich people, right? Here's some good news for you. Did you know that if you were making $60,000 a year in total household income, you were in the top 1% of the wage earners in the entire world? The top 1%. Now, I know with that bit of info, none of you are thinking, praise God, I had no idea. I got up this morning feeling sorry for myself. Then I came to Real Life tonight, and I found out that I am filthy, stinking rich, and I have been for years. It's a good day when we stop living in denial and just gratefully admit, man, I have been so blessed. I am so rich. Some of you know our daughter, Jody, who teaches here from time to time. She spent some time in Haiti working in a medical mission/orphanage, and it was so good for her in regard to feeling rich. It changed her perspective on stuff and entitlement and the importance of wealth. I mean, I wish every kid could spend some time living in an underdeveloped place like that. I wish every one of us could experience it, because when you travel around the world, and you see what some people live in, what some people eat, what they wear, I'm telling you, when you pack your duffel bag, your backpack to go back home, you don't really pack it. You just leave everything. Your shoes, your clothes, your toiletries, you think, man, how could I take anything home? And in those moments, you feel not only compassion for them, but you were overwhelmed with how much you have. In those moments, you feel so incredibly blessed, and you feel so much joy just giving all that stuff away. And you feel so rich. And then we come back to this culture of high expectations and upgrades and Amazon and HGTV, and we can't get enough. And suddenly that good feeling, that right feeling, that compassionate feeling, that generous feeling, that grateful feeling, it all starts to fade. So we are trying to learn together how to gratefully live in the truth that all of us are already rich, so that no matter what we actually have, we will experience contentment and joy, and we will gladly share with those people in need and gratefully use our resources and our lives to bring God's kingdom here on earth. There's this passage of Scripture where this guy named Paul, who wrote a lot of the New Testament of the Bible, he wrote a letter to a young guy, kind of his understudy, a young pastor named Timothy. And he says to Timothy, listen, Tim, you're going to have an opportunity to talk to a bunch of rich people, because people are richer than they actually think they are. And rich people have their own challenging issues, so I want you to teach them how to be good at being rich, because that's not an easy thing to do. Let's look at what Paul wrote, 1 Timothy chapter 6. Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. Those three words, when it comes to money, longing, loving, and craving, I have found them to be absolute heart stealers and life killers. My wife Debbie and I recently sat down for the first time in our life with a financial advisor, an investment expert, a retirement guru. And we laughed when we pulled into the parking lot thinking that we were going to go in there. And we sat in the truck for a few minutes and we just reminisced about our journey from being a clueless young couple with finances. We had zero financial training whatsoever. But early on, as a 20-year-old couple, we decided we were going to give God the first part of whatever we made, as little as it was, and we decided we were going to be available to help people in the moment when God put them in our path. We just wanted to be as generous as we could be, and we decided we're going to live within our means. Now, we didn't always do that. We made some stupid mistakes along the way, and then we heard about this novel thing called a budget, and we paid off our debt quickly. We even went to the envelope system. Anybody else ever do that before? I would cash my paycheck, put all the cash in envelopes, had like a giving envelope, a savings envelope, a golf envelope, a haircut. I didn't need much of that. Haircut envelope. Back in the day, I did actually. And we had all kinds of different envelopes. Grocery envelope, and when the grocery envelope ran out, when the eat out envelope ran out, I didn't borrow from the grocery envelope or the golf envelope. We just got to stay in it, and it helped us get on a budget and live within our means. And we taught our kids that way too. They had a savings envelope, a spending envelope, and a giving envelope. And we bought old houses along the way, just wreck a place because I love doing that stuff, and just poured some sweat equity as we renovated those places, would sell it, and then do it all over again, buy another one, fix it up, sell it. We just kept on doing that. And even though I have no plans of ever retiring, we were getting ready to walk in to get some counsel on what to do with all the money that God has blessed us with through the years. And we sat there in a truck in the parking lot of that financial place, and we just thanked God. And then we walked in to the meeting. And once we got in there, the financial advisor asked us about our future goals. And after he asked that question, I kind of checked out for a minute or two. And I started thinking about this story that Jesus tells about a dude who was obsessed with his stuff. His future goals were all about his security, his comfort, and himself. You might have heard the story that Jesus told. This is the way Jesus starts it in Luke 12. Beware. Don't always be wishing for what you don't have. For real life and real living are not related to how rich we are. Let me read that again. Beware. Don't always be wishing for what you don't have. For real life and real living are not related to how rich we are. So Jesus is warning us. If you don't get your heart right, greed and lust and envy will creep into your life, and it will rob your joy, your contentment, and your freedom. And then he follows it up with that story. He says, for instance, there was a farm of a certain rich man, produced a terrific crop, and he talked to himself, what can I do? My barn isn't big enough for this harvest. Then he said, well, here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll gather in all my grain and goods, and I'll say to myself, self, you've done well. You got it made and can now retire. Take it easy and have the time of your life. Just then God showed up and said, fool, tonight you die, and your barn full of goods, who gets it? And then Jesus says, that's what happens when you fill your barn with self and not with God. So I'm sitting there in this financial planning meeting thinking, I really don't know what our future goals are, but I know I don't want to build bigger barns, and I don't want to fill them all with myself because it's all His. He's the owner anyway, and I just want to do a good job of managing and using and giving stuff away and just being grateful for the amazing way God has blessed my life. So our financial guy was super wise. He's a great guy and super helpful. And Debbie and I walked away from the meeting saying to each other, when we were college students, living in married student housing, eating ramen noodles, did you ever think we'd be rich like this? Here's the deal. Rich isn't a number. We've always been rich, and so have you. And since we are all rich, God just wants you and me to get better and better at being rich. Paul goes on to say to this young pastor, Timothy, he says, tell those rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. He said, Timothy, make sure you tell them, don't put your hope there. Do not tie your security to your stock portfolio, your Bitcoin, real estate, or Roth IRA. Tell them to go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage, to do good, to be rich in helping others, to be extravagantly generous. If they do that, they'll build a treasury that will last, gaining life that is truly life. There's a proverb that kind of goes right along with all this. It was written by this guy named Solomon, richest guy who ever lived. He made Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates look like me. He's the richest guy who ever lived, and he wrote this. He said, the rich think of their wealth as a strong defense. They imagine it to be a high wall of safety. He's saying that when you begin to accumulate things and you become wealthy, or when you become wealthier, you can start to think that you're going to be able to plan, save, and accumulate and build your way to safety and security. Just like the bigger barns guy in Jesus' story, you get thinking, nothing can touch me now. And in the process, your hope shifts from someone who is secure and eternal to this imaginary safety net called wealth. Let me just ask you for fun. How much money would you need to accumulate so that you could be fearlessly secure? You got a number in mind? I'm talking about an amount where you wouldn't have to worry at all. I mean, no one could touch you, your kids, your grandkids, maybe even your great-grandkids, next generation. I mean, you got enough money amassed and you got it situated to where you are untouchable and your high wall is unscalable. How much would you have to be safe? Can I give you the answer? More than you currently have. Because if your hope is attached to your income, you don't worry less. You stress out more. You're always thinking, yeah, but what if? And maybe it's not high enough. You know why poor people are more generous than wealthy people? And that's a fact. Stats played that out. It's because poor people don't place their hope in their wealth. I have seen this on every single mission trip I've ever been on. It's amazing how joyfully generous poor people are. They almost get giddy sharing their food and sharing their hut and having you over for dinner. Why? Because they don't live with the myth that their hope is attached to their stuff. But rich people, at least the ones who let their hope drift, they can deceive themselves. They imagine, as Solomon wrote, they have this high wall of safety that somehow they're going to be able to protect themselves from every single eventuality. And if you allow your hope to shift toward wealth, here's what's going to happen. When your stuff becomes your hope, you will feel compelled to hoard your stuff. You just will. Because there will never be enough. Your barns will never be big enough. And you will get so full of self and insecurity and discontentment that you will not be generous. I mean, you can't afford to be truly generous because you're always building this imaginary high wall of safety. And every time you get to a certain number, you say, oh, that's it. That's the magic number. The wall is finally high enough. Then you start thinking, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. What about this? What if? Gang, that's a terrible way to live your life. And sometimes we don't see it happening in our soul, in our heart. But our hope starts to shift. And so that's why Paul writes again, 1 Timothy 6, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God. Because here's what can happen. When your hope starts to shift, your heart does as well. And we can all shift our hope. We can all of us can fall for the myth of more. We can all tumble into that stupid comparison trap. You know, the place where joy goes to die? Some of you might remember me telling the story like years ago, but it was a defining moment in my life. Our family, we were gifted from a generous couple to use a condo in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I don't know if you've ever been to Hilton Head, South Carolina, but it's a beautiful place. It's the spot that's got that red and white lighthouse on the harbor. They play a golf tournament is played there the weekend after the Masters. Some of you say, I don't care. But that's where we went. It's a beautiful place. And we got to go to a place called Harbor Town where that lighthouse is. And man, I couldn't believe how awesome it was. There were like $4 or $5 million yachts sitting out there in the harbor. I mean, all kinds of them, these beautiful homes, these beautiful condos. And I noticed that everybody there seemed to be younger than me. And I was just a young dad. We had 3 little kids. And I'm looking around all these nice cars. I was driving this old, stupid-looking gray station wagon. Anybody remember station wagons? We weren't supposed to have one, but we had one then. Everybody else had cool cars. They had a station wagon with a car top carrier. It looked like Chevy Chase on vacation, National Lampoon Vacation, you know. I felt so inadequate, and I'm just being vulnerable here. Envy and comparison started creeping into my soul. And I just thought, man, how much money do these people make? And I started feeling scarcity in my own life. So they had this talent show. They still do it in the summertime, where they invite all the kids that are there in Harbor Town to come up to the stage. It's under this big, huge oak tree with Spanish moss hanging. It's really cool. And all these kids say, okay, it's time for the talent show. And all these kids, it's a big sing-along. All these kids come out and they sit up on the stage. And I noticed that all these kids they got really nice, like matching clothes on. They're really well-dressed for the big show. And I look around for my kids, I can't find them. They're up on the stage. And they're not dressed like the other kids. I mean, we just came from the beach. They're dirty. They got these old T-shirts on. They're sunburned. And my son Derek's got a T-shirt with a hole that big in the front of it. And so they were getting ready for the talent show. And the guy, and this guy's been doing this for 30, 40 years now. He's playing guitar. He says, okay, who wants to sing? And I see this hand shoot up. Oh. And I can see it's my son Derek. He's 5 years old. He's a kindergartner. And I'm going, no, don't pick him. He goes, what about you? And Derek stands up. He doesn't look like any other kid up there. He's got a buzz haircut. We buzzed his hair before we went on vacation. He's sunburned. He's got freckles everywhere. He's got that big hole in his T-shirt. He stands up, and the guy goes, whoa, you're a big one. He was a stocky little kid. He goes, you're a big one. He goes, yep. So what's your name? He goes, my name's Derek. He said, where are you from? He goes, Kentucky. And the guy goes, oh. Like that explained everything. I don't know what he meant by that. But then he goes, oh, where'd you get that haircut? He goes, I don't know. He goes, come on, where'd you get that? Are you in the Marines? He goes, no. He goes, where'd you get your haircut? And in front of all these other rich people, Derek says, my pappy cut it with the dog clippers. I wanted to crawl under my seat. And it was true. We did right before we left for vacation. We couldn't take him to the barbershop, took some dog clippers, just sheared his head. That's what we did. And then the guy goes, what song you want to sing? And Derek goes, all my exes live in Texas. And he brought the house down and wins the talent show. And you know what his prize was? A new T-shirt. I think they just knew he needed one. I mean, I was so embarrassed. And my envy and all that comparison was rising up at me. And my kid gets up and does that. I was so embarrassed. The next day, I'm sitting on the beach, and I just start laughing out loud. And I'm watching my kids play in the water, and it just hit me. I am so stinking rich. God has blessed me so much. We got to go on a vacation. We got a car to drive. We got plenty of T-shirts. And I got 3 kids who love God and love their mom and me. And man, I am so, so rich. 1 Timothy chapter 6. Let me read it again. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything. Catch this, everything for our enjoyment. Now that last part, if you've been on a guilt trip during this series, that last part will take you off that guilt trip. Your Father says, the one who loves to give good gifts says, it's okay. I want you to enjoy some things. You can go ahead and get that latest iPhone. It's fine. You can remodel your kitchen, buy some new shoes, or if you need one, build a bigger barn. But just don't make the mistake of putting your hope in your wealth. He's saying, why would you spend a minute trying to build a fake wall of safety? Why would you give your heart to anything other than the one who gave his life for you? Why would you hope in riches when you can hope in the one who richly provides? So I want to invite you to make this declaration, because this is how we start being good at being rich. And God wants all of us to be really good at it. I'm going to read it first, then we're going to read it a couple of times together. I got this line from Andy Stanley years ago, and here's the statement. I will not place my hope in riches, but in him who richly provides. Why don't you say that with me? I will not place my hope in riches, but in him who richly provides. Let's say it again. I will not place my hope in riches, but in him who richly provides. Gang, that's a game changer right there. That will put you on the path to becoming a good rich person. And no matter how massively wealthy you might become, your possessions will never possess you. What you own will never own you. Your heart will always be his. And you'll be able to enjoy your Father's goodness to you wherever you're at on the financial spectrum, because your hope is not in your riches, but in the one who richly provides. You know, real life is full of rich people. I'm talking some really good rich people, growing rich people, generous rich people, compassionate, Jesus-centered, others-centered rich people. And I love, as we are learning to get better and better at this, how our hearts are expanding. And we really are, as Jesus put it, we're gaining life that is real life. It's just a blast to live a generous kind of life. I mean, Jesus was dead on when he said, it is so much better to give than it is to receive. And when Jesus said that, he wasn't unpacking a sermon on tithing. He was just stating a fundamental law of life. And a whole bunch of us here are experiencing exactly that. About 25 years ago, Jake and Rusty and I were together at a church in Lexington, Kentucky. And Rusty was on staff, and Jake was a high school student, and I was the lead pastor. And our church, God was just bringing so many people to our church, and it was incredible what he did. And we were totally out of room. We were doing 6 weekend services. I think we did 2 on Saturday night and 4 on Sunday. It was a lot. We had no kid space. Kids were all over the place in the hallways and stuff. People were parking in the grass. It was crazy. And we desperately needed to expand so we could continue to reach people. So together as a church, we all counted all of our blessings together. And we decided that all of us were rich in some way, and we came together in this sacrificial way. And all of us rich people, we joyfully pooled our resources, and it was one of the spiritual highlights of my life watching people do that. I mean, rich kids gave up their babysitting money. Rich people sold vintage baseball card collections, gave stocks and properties and retirement funds and vacation homes. And I remember one time a guy giving a large amount, and he had a note attached to it. It said, we had planned on building our dream house, but that's going to be on hold for a while, because right now our dream house seats about 3,000. We want to make room for people to encounter Jesus the way we have. And I'll never forget Connie's story. Connie was confined to a wheelchair. She had polio when she was a kid. And honestly, she's pretty bitter about her life and angry, feeling sorry for herself all the time. And she had reason to be, if you want to go there. But her brother, just a strong Jesus follower, just kept inviting her to church. She would always say, no, I'm not going. Then she eventually came. And God just did something in her heart, began to soften her heart. And to make a long story short, she gave her life to Jesus. She was baptized, and her bitterness turned into as much joy as I've ever seen in a person. So we were doing this thing at church where we were pooling our resources together so we could expand. And it was a Thanksgiving dinner. They were sitting around the table, and they were all talking about what they were thankful for. And it came to Connie, and she said, I'm so thankful that you all finally got me to come to church. Jesus Christ has changed my life. I can't believe I waited this long. Why did I hold him at arm's length all these years? I'm just so grateful. And then she said this, I don't want you to tell anybody this, but I've been saving for a handicap accessible van. I just gave all that money to help our church expand to reach new people. I'll just get a van later on. Well, obviously her brother told me about it, and I was so moved when I heard the story. A little while later, I was asked to speak at a corporate gathering, and the theme that I was supposed to talk about was how sacrifice is giving up something you value for something you value even more. And so I just told Connie's story. 2 days after I met with that company, I get a call from them. And they say, hey, we pooled our resources here, and we want to buy that woman a van. So can you imagine how much fun I had to hand her the keys to a brand new wheelchair accessible van, one you could drive with your hands, on Christmas Eve, and just tell her, your generosity has touched people all the way in this place that you've never even heard of. You see, extraordinary generosity is extraordinarily powerful. And that's why we're all trying to be rich around here, to give more, serve more, and love more. Because as you decide to gratefully and joyfully walk this path, just watch what happens to your heart. And perhaps God will honor our collective faith, and he will do something extraordinary in our city, in our nation, and who knows, maybe even the world. Let's just pray for a minute. Lord, thank you so much for what you've given us. We acknowledge, we drop the denial, and we just say we are rich. We have been so richly blessed. And Jesus, as we celebrated just a few minutes ago in taking communion, we know that you became poor for our sakes so that we might become rich. Thank you so much for your life. Thank you for the blessings you give us, God. We want to be really, really good, rich people doing good stuff with our stuff that belongs to you anyway. We want to manage it well, and we want to make a difference by being generous folks. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Mike. Man, so grateful for that. I know God's still working on my heart, and I hope he's working on yours as well. Over the last couple weeks, we have invited you to either continue or jump into, for the very first time, this generosity initiative called Real Hope. It's a 3-year initiative, and we finished 2 of them, which means it's over at the end of the year. And what we've already done as a church family is given resources to organizations that serve vulnerable populations. We've helped start churches from Berkeley to San Diego and everywhere in between. You've also helped position Real Life to be healthy in a financial way for years to come so that we can continue serving our home community for a long, long time. And if you've been around, then you've heard that we are expanding the vision to bring real hope at home. There are some areas of the campus that we are excited to either develop for the first time or add a little bit more value to so that this can continue being a place of hope for the Santa Clarita Valley. And so when you invite your friends and your family, they can meet Jesus in a life-changing way like you've met Jesus. So we've walked you through kind of 4 different areas of campus, but we want to give you a little bit more of a picture as to what is possible that when you give these things could happen. First of all, on this side of the campus, there's a grass area over there that we would love to develop into a courtyard to where it can be a space for you to build community on a weekly basis. And when you bring your friends and your family, we don't want you to feel rushed to get in and out, but we want to provide a physical space to slow down and have some conversations. And so think about the best backyard hangout spot you've ever seen. We're hoping to develop that over there so that you can build community in a dedicated space. The second area is our amphitheater. Now, we have a very unique space here on campus, one of the most unique in all church world that I've seen, and we love our outdoor worshipers. And right now, it's not fully developed as far as the furniture goes. We bring out some folding chairs every week, and it's okay, it's just not great. We'd love to equip that space to where it can be an excellent worship environment 12 months a year where all kinds of people can come and experience real life outside. We also want to help our kids' space. We have dozens and hundreds of families coming to Real Life for the first time every single year. And if you've ever been upstairs on the second floor right before service, it gets pretty jammed. There's a lot of people trying to do the same thing at the same time. So we want to help with traffic flow and brighten it up a little bit so that it can be multi-use, multi-space. And we think that's going to make our parents feel very comfortable dropping off the people that they love the most there in our kids' space. The final area is right here in this room. This building is 14 years old. And so if you've ever been in any place for 14 years straight, you know that after a while, you got to give it a little TLC, upgrade a few things. And so in this room, the side screens, they're on their last leg. And we'd love to brighten it up in here as you experience the message and see one another. We'd love to see you as well. And we'd love for you to engage with what you're learning by taking notes, by reading a Bible. And that will help you take with you all week long what you're experiencing right here in this room. And so we've already gotten great feedback as to your enthusiasm around this, but we've also made a couple promises throughout the series. The first one is this: we don't want you to give a single dollar that you don't want to give. Man, you already heard it from Mike, that the whole act of generosity is one of joy and one of gratitude, and so if your heart isn't in it, we don't want it. Secondly, our church will only go as far and as fast as your generosity allows. That when we give, that's going to be our indicator to leadership, that God is in it, that you're in it, that we're all in this together. And so when you give, that will trigger for us the opportunity to develop some of those projects. And so if you've never given at all, over 90% of the people that give in real life, they give online through our website or our app. And so when you go to that website, you'll see it right here. We'd love for you to go to reallife.com/realhope. And there you can see the different projects and you'll have the opportunity to give. And when you do, you'll get to choose one of two things. You can either give to the general fund. That's the thing that makes this thing go week in and week out. Or if God is leading you to help spur on some of the development of these projects, you can hit the drop-down menu and click Real Hope. And when that fund grows, we'll know that it's time to move on some of those projects. Now, last week, we tried to give you a couple handles to figure out what you could do. And we're hoping that as you listen to these messages and as you pray about what God is leading your family to or as an individual, that all of us can take a step in our growth. The first step would be for those of you that need to go from nothing to something. You've never given anything before, maybe in your entire life, but what you just heard from Mike saying, man, I want that. Whatever that is, whatever those stories stir in my heart, I want to be that kind of rich, not numerically, but in the spirit with which I give. Now, I know that sometimes it's scary to think about giving a whole lot at first. Try something. And what you'll see is God come through in ways that you've never seen him come through before. There's some of us that have been giving sporadically every once in a while, just when it comes up. But you need to grow from something to proportional giving. What that means is building that into the budget, building that into an intentional and purposeful choice where we want to give God our first and best and take him at his word, that he will open up the windows of heaven and pour down more blessing than we have room to take in. Then there's others of us that we've been proportional givers for a while. It's become really normal for us. And God's saying there's still more. That this journey of generosity is not something that we graduate from. And God is leading you to continue stretching yourself so that he can show you that he is still faithful and trustworthy. Friends, every single one of us is on this screen. And what I'm hoping is that you'll find your step that God is leading you to, and that you will prayerfully decide how you want to take him at his word. Again, we don't want you to give $1 that you don't want to give, but I know that in my life, in the area of generosity, God has grown me further, faster in knowing his faithfulness. And I've been able to sit back in so many moments saying, God, I don't know how you did that, but you clearly did. And I'm incredibly grateful. We want to have grateful hearts, joyful hearts. We want to have hearts for what God is doing in this world. And so as we wrap up our time today, we're going to sing a song that will help center our hearts on the gratitude that we have for what God has done for us. Will you stand and sing one more time with us tonight?